So welcome back. So from the readings today in Jeremiah 49, it's very evident that the judgment of God against the surrounding and enemy nations of Israel was very intense. So this chapter really details God's judgment against them. And there were a few surprises in the judgment. For example, God restoring the Ammonites in the later days. So he says that, they will be destroyed, but he would restore them. And that actually is evidenced by, and I've said this before, modern day Amman, the capital of Jordan, is actually the land of the Ammonites. So Ammon, kind of like they kind of evolved in the name. But yeah, Amman and the Ammonites exist today. So that's God definitely keeping his word. For the Edomites, and remember, the Edomites are descendants of Esau, and that's rivalry between Esau and Jacob, Edom and Israel just kept on going, and God said that they will be utterly destroyed, which they are. I've mentioned before, and I did some research, and there's like no, Edomites, or their land or where they used to be can be identified. I did see some places pointed out during my trip to Jordan that they said was land where the Edomites lived, but there are no sort of Edomites. But here God also says that he would be the one in verse 11, that he will be the one to take care of their orphans and their widows, even though he will destroy them. And that just goes to buttress the points that we just have been making and we've been seeing about God. God is a God. I was about to say someone. He's not someone. He's God. And he truly does care about the widows, the orphans, and the less privileged in society. And we should too. I was reading the book of James yesterday, and I think James 1, I think about 26, I think. God says real religion. Well, James was telling, the people, and he was like, God considers real religion, taking care of the orphans and the widows. So this narrative transcends just the Old Testament. Even in the New Testament, we see God reiterating, the care, the need to take care of orphans and widows. It was very evident from the reading, if you were paying attention, that some of the people who were actually innocent and blameless had to suffer along with those who were guilty and had to be taken into exile. And that just took me back to the learnings and the things that we have known or we have learned so far, that no one really sins in a vacuum. So one man's sin can and does impact and affect all. But that's the same way that one man's righteousness gave all of us right standing with God, and that's Jesus, obviously, to all that believe in him. Elam was another enemy nation that was mentioned in the writing. No one seems to know where that is, and God promises to restore them. There's no apparent reason for this other than perhaps maybe common grace. But I did some research, and they were like, oh, the land is unclear where Elam is, but maybe they are restored somewhere. One day we'll find out. Like we already know from the prophets, God had promised to judge Babylon, and after he had used them to exact his judgment on the people, they too would come under judgment. And when God eventually does destroy Babylon, it will mark the end of captivity for his people. And the remnant will return to Zion with their hearts full of love for God, after he had punished them like he punished the king of Assyria. Truly, God exalts and brings down nations at his will, and he uses them to serve his purposes. So that was a summary of those two chapters. Now here's my the lesson I learned about God's character from these readings. God pardons our sins because of Christ. When he looks at us, he doesn't see our sins, he doesn't see our failures, he doesn't see our shortcomings. He sees the righteousness of Christ because he has redeemed us through his death on the cross, which paid for our sins. In Jeremiah 50:20, the prophecy says this: in those days, at that time, declares the Lord, Search will be made for Israel's guilt, but there will be none, and for the sins of Judah, but none will be found. For I will forgive the remnant that I spare. And this shows that after all said and done, with the sin and the condemnation and the judgment, there is redemption and restoration, and God actually pardons the sins of the people. And we can see that evidence today through Christ's sacrifice, as we have right standing with God because of Christ. So God is a God of forgiveness and pardoning of sins. Thank you for joining me today. I love this lesson and I'm looking forward to more. So see you here tomorrow. We'll continue with the book of Jeremiah. Have a good day.